All right, so our final topics today will cover both link and node evaluations and go through the different graphic parameters associated with each. So the link evaluations can be used to gather roadway data, such as information about the speed, density, delay, and volume for each of the link segments. And then the node evaluations can be used to gather data for each of the intersections. So from this, we can get information about both average and maximum queue length, as well as vehicle delay information and the number of stops associated with each movement. So first we'll go through all of the link evaluation setup. So in order to set this up, first we'll do this on the individual links. So if you double click on a particular link, that will open up the link window. And from there you can go to the Others tab, and then you can go ahead and select Link Evaluation and update the desired segment length. Now if you want to do this for multiple links all at once, you can go ahead and open up that link list, and then you'll just need to check the Link Evaluation Active attribute and then update that segment length attribute as well. Now the segment length can be updated to a really large number, such as 9,999, and something like this will allow you to capture information for the link as a whole, since that will cover the entire link length. However, you can choose smaller segment length if you do want that link to kind of be broken up into smaller sections, and that way you can gather smaller segments of data along each of the links. And then from there, you'll need to go to the evaluation menu and select the configuration option. And then within the results attribute tab is where you can check collect data for links. And then from there, you can define the from and the to time. So this will be the time for which all of the simulation data will be collected. So this will allow you to collect data after any warm-up has occurred. And then you can set the desired interval. So in this case, data will be collected every 900 seconds. And then if you select the More button, this is where you can collect data for the link as a whole or for each of the individual lanes. And then in order to view the results, you'll just select the evaluation menu again and select Result List. And from there, you'll check Link Results. And then this will open up a link results table where you can view information about which simulation run each of the segment results are for, as well as the time interval. And then you can go ahead and look at some of the link related attributes. For example, here's where you can see the density along that link segment, which will be the average number of vehicles in that segment divided by that length of the segment. You can also view the relative delay information, which is just going to be the total delay divided by the total travel time for all of the vehicles that traveled over that link segment. And in Vissim, delay is calculated as the actual vehicle travel time, which will take into account any information if they have to wait for signals or stop signs, and then minus the theoretical travel time, which will be the free flow vehicle speed without any delay. And then you can also get information about the speed on that link segment. And this is just calculated by taking the total distance traveled on the segment divided by the total time that the vehicles have spent on that segment. And then finally, you can get the link volume, which is just the number of trips through that segment. And if a part of a vehicle is maybe on the beginning of the segment or part of the vehicle is leaving that segment, all of those partial trips will also be combined and included in this count. And then if you do want to do any additional post-processing or additional analysis, you can copy these results by selecting the Copy button at the top of the link list. And then you can go ahead and paste all of that data into Excel if you want to create any additional plots or tables or charts. And here's just an example where we're looking at different vehicle speeds. So we're taking that speed attribute and then plotting how that changes over time. And then here's some different options for the link visualization. So you can look at different link coloring options so you can see how maybe the vehicle speed changes throughout the simulation. You can also add link bars, which is the middle option here, and this will just be bars drawn on the edges of the link, and each of these will be a different width depending on the attribute selected, which in this case is volume. And then if you do want to view all this information together all at once, you can set up both the link coloring and the bars. So in this case, we're looking at the link speed, and then we have link bars drawn in where the width represents the volume, and then those link bars are colored based on the density for each of the link segments. So all of this can be set up within the graphics parameter window. So for this, you can just select the little graphics button next to links, or you can right click and go to edit graphics parameters. And then from there, you can go down kind of to the middle section there where you can update that drawing mode to use color scheme. And directly below that is where you can set up additional configuration. So that's where you can choose which attribute you want to display for the coloring. And then below that is where you can set up the different class bounds as well as the different color options. And then if you want to draw in the link bars, you'll just need to update that drawing mode to links and link bars. And then very similarly to the coloring, you can set the configuration directly below that. So over on the right is where you can set what attribute you want to view by width. And then below that is where you can set up any of the link bar coloring if you want to select a different attribute to take that into account. And then below that is where you can set up again those different class bounds and color options. All right, and then moving on to the node evaluation. The first part for this setup will be go ahead and adding those nodes to the network. And what this will do is it will group all of the different links together so that these can all be included and considered to be part of a single intersection. So in order to add these, you'll just need to select the nodes network object from the toolbar, and then you'll hold Control and right click to place the first node start point. And then from there, you can just left click to place the remaining points to go ahead and finish that node. And it's important to place these at an intersection and make sure that all of the links are included, including any of the turn bays. And then it's also important to make sure that the node encompasses any control devices. For example, if you have any of the signal heads or stop signs, just make sure that those are all contained within the node, because these will be used to calculate some of the evaluation results, such as any of the queue lengths. Those signal heads are going to be where those queue length segments will be started from. And then from there, once you have your node placed, you'll just want to make sure you have the use for evaluation attribute selected. And if you do want to update this for multiple nodes at once, you can go ahead and open up the node list. And then from there, you can check the use for evaluation attribute. And then again, we'll have to go back to that evaluation and configuration menu. And here's where we can check collect data for nodes. And again, we can define that from time to time, as well as the interval in which to collect data. And then in this case, if you select that More button, this will actually allow you to adjust the definition for both the delay segments as well as the queue definition. So when you enter in the value here for that delay segment, this will be the where that delay segment start point is placed. So in this case, that default value is 328 feet, and you'll see that that delay segment is going to be placed 328 feet from the upstream of the starting edge there for that node. So at this point is where that delay segment will be placed. And so of course you can increase or decrease this value, but note that this is going to be the value for all of the nodes within the network. And then on the right-hand side, we have some more information about the queue definition. So as a vehicle is approaching an intersection, the queue will be considered once that vehicle's speed drops below the begin velocity selected. So in this case, it's 3.1 miles per hour. And then the vehicle will continue to be considered to be in the queue until its speed then goes past that end velocity set, in this case 6.2 miles per hour. So these are just a couple of ways that you can update that definition for the entire network for both delay segments and queues. And then in order to view the results, you'll just go back to that evaluation menu and select result list and then node results. And this will display a table down at the bottom. And again, this is where you can view information about both the average queue length and maximum queue length that occur for each of the movements within the node. And then you can also get the number of vehicles that traveled through each of those movements, as well as any simulation-based delay. And that's what those level of service values are going to be based off of. And you can also get information about the number of stops that occur for each movement, as well as how long those stop delays are. And then as far as visualization goes, for the nodes, we have two different options. The first one is going to be turn value. So this is where you can actually view different information, such as the number of vehicles that traveled through each of these turns during particular intervals throughout the simulation. And then on the right-hand side, you can see that the queue lengths are displayed there visually. So this is just a good way to be able to quickly check your network and kind of see how far either both the average queue lengths are or the maximum queue lengths. And then in order to turn any of these on, you'll just need to go to the node graphic parameters window. And for the turn values, that's kind of down near the bottom. So you'll just need to check show turn value visualization. And then on the right-hand side, you can click the ... and that will open up the visualization window where you can update the attribute selected. In this case, it's going to be number of vehicles for the current time interval. And then below that is also where you can add any coloring if you want each of those turns to show up as a different color based on a movement attribute. And then if you want to display any of the queue lengths, all of that information will be at the very bottom. So you'll just need to check the show queue lengths option, and then you can choose whether you want the average queue length to be displayed or the maximum queue length. And then at the very bottom is where you can choose to show that queue length label. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at an example here. So in this case, we've already got both the link and node evaluations turned on and have some of the results being shown in the network. All right, so I'll just go to the evaluation window here to configuration, and you can see for both the links and the nodes, these will start collecting evaluations after 900 seconds once the simulation has had some time to warm up. And then the link information will be updated every 900 seconds, while the node information will just be collected as a whole for the 1 hour time interval here. And down below here, you can see I already have the link results open in a window, as well as the node results. And you can see again for the node results, this is going to be for each of the movements for each of the nodes in the network, whereas the link segments are going to be for each segment that we've defined for each of the links. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look again at some of the graphics parameters options. So for the links, I'm just going to click on the graphic parameters button here on the right-hand side. Again, you can also get to this window if you right-click and then go down to Edit Graphics Parameters. That will go ahead and open up that same window here for the links. And then if you want to add any of the different coloring options, you can just change that drawing mode here to use color scheme. And then directly below that is where you can set up the attribute that you want to use for the coloring. So in this case, we're looking at the speed for this current run and the current interval for all the vehicle types. But you could choose different attributes. For example, you could choose to look at vehicle delay or density or even volume. And then you can set up all of those different boundaries down here. So if you wanted to change any of those, you can just update that upper bound. And then on the right here is where you can choose different coloring options. And then we also have this color picker here on the side with some built-in configurations for speed, density, volume, and loss time. And so you can also choose these and then work from those if you want to make any further adjustments from there. And you can see the information will get updated as the simulation is running based on how frequent your evaluation interval are set for the links. All right, and then I'm going to go ahead and turn this back to display types for now. And I'm going to go down here to the link bar option. So in this case, you can either choose to show just the link bars on their own. So you'll notice the links themselves will kind of disappear. Or you can choose to show both the links and the link bars, in which case the bars will just be drawn here on the edges of each of the links. And then directly below that is where you can set up additional configuration. So this is where you can choose the attribute that you want to scale the width of the bar. And then below here is where you can choose the different attribute you want to use for the coloring. And if you don't want the link bars to be classified by color, you can just choose no classification, in which case the base color defined at the top will be used. And then if you want any of this information to also be displayed in a legend so that you can easily keep track of what the different colors are, you can just choose this legend include link colors or legend includes link bar colors. So you'll just need to check these options, and then in the network editor, you'll just need to select the legend on button up at the top of the toolbar. And then you'll see that both of these legends will show up in the right-hand side. All right, so that's about it for the links. So I'm just going to turn all of that off, and then let's go take a look at some of the node graphic parameters. So for any of the, again, the queue lengths, all of that information is down at the very bottom. So you can just check show queue lengths, and then directly below that option is the location to either use the average queue length or the maximum queue length. And then you can also update the color and choose to show that link label. And you can either choose to view these while the simulation is running, or you can also view these once the simulation has finished if you just want to see the information for the run as a whole. And then that last option here is going to be for viewing that turn value visualization. So I'll just turn that on here. And if you have nodes selected, you can choose to kind of increase the size of this bubble. If you highlight over the node boundary, then you can just click and drag if you want to make this larger or smaller for each of the intersections, if you want to call out particular locations. And then if you again click the ... here, this is where you can choose which attribute you want to display for those different turn values. So if you wanted to look at maybe the number of vehicles that were able to go through each movement for a particular interval, you can select all of that here. And then directly below here is where you can also choose if you wanted to color each of the turns based on a movement attribute as well. Now in this case, we did create additional user-defined attribute here. And so what this is doing is actually summing up the relative flow values for any of the static routes that travel over each movement. So let me just go here to this user-defined attributes. And so this is really useful if you kind of want to see what your defined demand values are. If you have set up maybe route information for the network as a whole or just static routing for each intersection, this will just allow you to quickly add up the sum of each of those relative flows and then visually display it on the network. So that way you can do some checks, maybe compare against the served volume, or to just see what the actual demand value should be. So in this case, in this user-defined attribute, we're just going ahead and summing up any of the relative flow values for the, in this case, the first time interval that's defined within this network file. And then if you zoom in here, this is where you can see in more detail each of the values for each of the turns. And then you'll notice that, again, the larger turns are going to have larger width than the smaller turns. So a lot of different options for visually displaying this data, which is really helpful both when you're running the simulation to just see how the network is performing, or also for doing some additional post-process analysis once the simulation run has been completed. And with that, I will turn it back over to Adam to go over any questions.